Madam,
Start video. Okay. Hello,
Your
Vijayalakshmi ma'am.
video is not on, Jansi. Your video is not on.
My video is not on.
Vijayalakshmi Madam, please start.
Yes,
Now,
okay, ma'am. Yes. Good morning, students. Welcome to Zoology webinar. Today we'll be learning about physiology of human excretory system. I request Ms. Jansi Garu to take over the session.
good morning, Vijayalakshmi ma'am. Thank you very much. Dear students, yesterday we learned about the anatomy of human excretory system. Today, let us continue and try to understand the physiology or mechanism of urine formation. But before entering into the details of that, I just want all of you to have a common understanding of few of the terms that we keep using in our daily life, not only in daily life, but here also in this concept understanding, we need to know this. So what is the first slide that you can see in front of you? This is about diffusion. I'm sure all these concepts you have learned back then in ninth class, but let us revise because we keep using these terms here. What is this slide over here? This part you can see. This is a solution. How do we define solution? Solution consists of two parts, that is solvent and then solid particles, or it is liquid or gaseous which is dissolved in it. So these particles which are getting dissolved, we call these as solutes. So diffusion means you find it is movement of the molecules, movement of the solute molecules, solute particles from their higher concentration to lower concentration till equilibrium is attained. This movement of solute particles from their higher concentration or from its higher concentration to its lower concentration till equilibrium is attained is called diffusion. So here these molecules don't spend energy. This is passive. So here also similarly you can see another example. Suppose if you take water and try to dissolve in this, pour in this a few drops of any dye or colored liquid, or for that matter ink, you find that its concentration here as it is coming down, it is high. That means this is solute particle, and slowly afterwards you find this distribution of the solute in this entire bottle around, and slowly equilibrium is attained. So this is diffusion. Next, let's move on to the next concept. As you can see, this is osmosis. What is osmosis? Now in first slide, let me go back. First slide, we have seen it is not water molecules which are moving, but it is solute which is moving around here, solute particles. If you study osmosis, here we find it is the movement of water. Whenever we use the word osmosis, you understand it is movement of water. Now, movement of water from where to where? To understand this concept, let us try to go through these two situations given here. So here we are having raisins. I think you know the meaning of the word raisins, which we commonly call this as is dry fruit kishmish. Suppose you take kishmish, dry fruits, and put it in water, right? Here we are having two different types of concentrations of solutions. One which is present within the cell, that is one type of concentration of solution that you find, or medium or material, and this is outside environment which is of water. After some time, after few hours, what how will you find the state of these raisins? We find these are swollen, they get swollen up. Why? Because we find here movement of water molecules from outside to inside. That means there are two different media over here, two different concentrations you find, one inside and the other one is outside. So here water moves from its higher concentration. Water's concentration is more here outside, and water concentration inside the solute is less. So water is moving from where its concentration is high to where concentration is low. Or if we are talking about solute concentration, we find solutes within the cell is more than the percentage of solutes outside. Here it is less or negligible, very low. Whereas solute concentration here, it is very high. So water is moving from low concentration to high concentration. So when you are saying osmosis, osmosis is the movement of water molecules from low concentrations to high concentrations till equilibrium is attained. Now let's discuss this particular thing. Here, water is entering inside the system, inside living cells. So this is called as endosmosis. Endo means moving inside cell. Let's talk about here, taking another situation. We have taken the same swollen raisins, and this time what are we doing to these swollen raisins? We are putting them in now salt solution. That means we are having again two different types of solutions with different concentrations. One is outside, which is salt solution, this concentration, and we find again concentration of solute, water, everything inside. So two different concentrations. Now what will happen if you leave these raisins for some time? What will happen to raisins after some time? Here we have seen these raisins, they were swollen up. But here we find that they shrink. Raisins shrink. Why do they shrink? Because again, where is water high in here? If you compare, we find water concentration is high inside the cell than outside. Or if you talk about solute concentration is high here outside than inside. So we find that slowly water comes out. So this is movement of the water outside to outside from inside. Again we are saying it is movement of water. So osmosis is movement of water from low concentrations to high concentrations. This is osmosis. Now here as water is coming out of the cells, we call this as exosmosis. Now, in previous slide, diffusion or osmosis, when movement of particles is taking place, you don't find here energy being spent. No energy is spent by molecules or cells over here. Let's move on. What is this? Isotonic, hypotonic or hypertonic solutions. Now, before itself, I explained you what is solution. Solution consists of a solvent, which is mostly liquid. It can be gaseous also. Here we have solute particles which get dissolved and you can't see. This is an example of solution. Suppose if you are taking two different types of solutions, then how do we compare the solutions in terms of concentration and give name to them? Look at the number of solute particles over here. It is only one. That means this area, this represents one solution. This is another solution, this in brown color. And these two are separated by this particular semi-permeable membrane, a membrane, so that there can be movement of particles around. We know that even our cell membrane is semi-permeable. So here you find only one solute particle, and here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 solute particles. So what do we find over here is that when you compare the solute concentration, this is having low concentration. Its concentration is less. Here the concentration is high. So with reference to this, this solution is having less concentration. So we say that this is hypotonic solution. Now, I want all of you to please make a note of all the terms that I'm saying, friends, because in future, in further slides, we are going to come across these terms. So I won't explain there again and again. Now, let's talk about the second. What is this second picture or second solution here? You can see again this same solution we have taken, but number of solute molecules, when you see here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 solute particles are present. Even here in another solution also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 solute particles. That means both the sides. That means in both the solutions, the concentration of solute is the same. So when such solutions exist where the concentration is same or equal, we call such solutions as isotonic with each other. Now look at this particular thing. Here, in this brown colored solution, there are only 3 particles. Whereas you can find over here, number of particles of solute are more. So with reference to this, now this is called as hypertonic solution. What do we understand by these terms, these 3 terms? Hypotonic, less solute concentration. Isotonic concentration of two different liquids is the same that you are considering or talking at particular time. And hypertonic, one of the solutions concentration is high with reference to other. Modes of transport. We know that there is a lot of movement in our body of different molecules going across a cell membrane. So how do these molecules keep moving from one place to another, or from outside to inside cell, or inside to outside cell? There are three such methods. One is, as I discussed earlier, diffusion. Simply, wherever concentration of solute or ions is high, from there things move to low concentration areas till equilibrium is attained. This is diffusion. No energy is spent here. In second kind, as you can see over here, this is facilitated diffusion. That means here also this is passive. Whenever you are saying passive transport, no energy is spent here. So these particles, they want to come, but they want help of someone to carry them. It is just like, we can take analogy. Suppose you are standing at one bank of one river, and you want to move to the other side. So you try to go to the other side with the help of a boat, right? Like that, these particles also need some boat-like structure. That means some proteins to help them to to carry them. So this is called as facilitated diffusion. In the third type of transport, we find these molecules, they are taken inside by spending energy. ATP, energy currency, is used over here. So wherever energy is used, we call that particular mode of transport as active transport. What do we mean by active transport? Active transport means it is the movement of particles or solute particles or ions across membrane, but with the expenditure of energy. Usually, when does this happen, this take place? This takes place, when we are talking about diffusion, I'm saying that till equilibrium is attained. But when you're talking about active transport, energy is spent even against concentration gradient. Now, that means even beyond equilibrium, if the things have to be taken inside, no thing should be left out here. Cell needs all these particles. Cell requires all these particles, so it will take inside, irrespective of equilibrium, attaining equilibrium. There it spends energy. That is where we call it as active transport. Same example, again I quoted over here. So you find that particles are over here, they are present. Slowly these particles reach inside. Generally, we say till equilibrium is attained, but here in living systems, we want all the particles inside. Their energy is spent, which is active transport. Now, after learning some of the basic terms, terminology, their meaning and all, let's try to get back to our physiology of urine formation. Yesterday we have learned about anatomy of urinary system, sorry. So urinary system, a quick recap, it consists of a pair of kidneys, a pair of ureters, as you can see, ureters getting into this urinary bladder, joining, and urinary bladder opening outside through urethra tube, and urethra has got its opening. Now, this slide shows the summary of all what we have learned yesterday. Same thing, kidneys, ureters, urinary bladder. This is, this is not PS of kidney. This would be vertical section, longitudinal section of kidney. And here is the structure of nephron. Each kidney is made up of 1 million nephrons, and this is the structure of nephron. Mechanism of urine formation, or physiology of urine formation. This is also called as uropoiesis. It is termed as uropoiesis. There are 3 steps involved in this. There are 3 steps of urine formation. First step is called as ultrafiltration or glomerular filtration. First step, filtration. Second step is selective reabsorption. The third step involved in the formation of urine or uropoiesis is tubular secretion. Now let's try to understand these steps step by step. Before we get into the details of that, this slide shows how these nephrons are situated in cortex and medulla. We find over here, this is Bowman's capsule, then this part is proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, collecting, this is distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct. This is cortical nephron, and then you have, this is juxtamedullary nephron over here, this one having very lengthy loop of Henle. Okay, now let's try to understand the first step in the filtration process, urine formation. What happens over here? First step is that yesterday we have learned very clearly that efferent, AFF, ERENT, efferent arteriole is getting into Bowman's capsule over here, and this is getting split into capillaries. Each Bowman's capsule receives around 50 capillaries. So network of these 50 capillaries is called glomerulus. So these 50 capillaries, they join together, become efferent arteriole, and the blood comes out. Let's try to understand. Yesterday I told you even one more point, that when you look at the diameter of this tube, efferent arteriole is larger, bigger than this efferent. This is having lesser diameter. Why? I asked you a question, but I did not give you the answer. Let us understand that now here. When you're, just imagine that there is a big pipe and suddenly you're connecting that big pipe to a smaller pipe. What happens here near the junction? Imagine that you are connecting a big pipe with larger lumen to a pipe which is having smaller diameter, smaller lumen. What happens at the junction? If liquid is flowing through these two pipes, we find that the pressure changes. There is increase in pressure near the junction. Same phenomena is taking place over here also. Blood flows through the efferent arteriole, and here the pressure is less. Here pressure is more, because of which there is certain pressure over here which is created, which helps in filtration. This helps in filtration. This is 10 mm of Hg, this pressure over here, which is helpful for filtering our blood. This is the purpose of this difference in diameter of these two tubes. The first step, let's try to understand the definition of this term, filtration. What is filtration? Filtration means it is the filtration of the blood that is flowing through these capillaries of glomerulus into the lumen of the Bowman's capsule. Lumen is the space that is present over here in this double walled cup Bowman's capsule. So what is filtration? Filtration is the filtration of blood. It is the blood which is getting filtered. Filtration of the blood in the capillaries of glomerulus into the lumen of Bowman's capsule. So this is called as filtration. Now, as I mentioned to you that there is pressure over here which is created. The filtration of the blood that is occurring here, under which this is taking place, that is called as ultrafiltration or glomerular filtration pressure. It is called as glomerular filtration pressure. The pressure under which this filtration is taking place. Now, why 10 mm of Hg finally it is coming to, and how we are deriving at this, let's try to understand. Dear students, I want all of you to make calculations as I am speaking and explaining this, because I don't have any ready-made calculations over here to explain the pressure and the resistance. Usually what is happening is blood flows over here. The blood that is entering efferent arteriole and into this capillaries over here, that blood has pressure of 60 mm of Hg. 60 mm of Hg. With that pressure, blood is flowing over here into each Bowman's capsule, into the capillaries over here. But this pressure, this blood pressure which it is coming, we call this as hydrostatic pressure of blood. This comes across resistance. That means it is facing certain kind of opposing forces. So if you are moving very fast and somebody opposes you, resists you, then what happens to your speed, to your flow? It becomes less, or you slow down over there. So same thing is happening over here also. This blood which is flowing over here with 60 mm of Hg, it encounters pressure from opposite side in two different ways. One kind of pressure that this blood faces is from blood itself. It is from blood itself. That means there are certain proteins which are present in blood which offers this resistance. And those proteins are nothing but they are albumin, big sized albumin proteins. Because of their osmotic potential nature, they don't allow the molecules to come out of the capillaries. Now, how do you explain this particular condition? You just imagine this. You are walking along with your friend. You want to go very fast, but your friend is pulling you back. Then what happens to your speed? It becomes less. Similar is the condition which is happening over here. Blood is flowing over here, plasma, red blood cells, everything, it is coming over here. But there is this albumin protein which is trying to slow down the flow of this blood. So that is the first resistance that this blood faces, or the pressure of the blood faces over here. So how much is that resistance which is offered because of this albumin proteins? It is 30 mm of Hg. So blood initially is coming over here with 60 mm of Hg, whereas blood itself, the proteins itself is offering its first resistance, and that is 30 mm of Hg. So out of 60, 30 you remove. Left out pressure, it is only 30 mm of Hg. Now let's try to understand what about the other resistance. Who is offering the other resistance or opposing force? That is this Bowman's capsular, this hydrostatic pressure which is offered by this Bowman's capsular, the fluid. There is always fluid present over here, which is nothing but nephric filtrate, and even outside you find over here this particular interstitial. Outside this Bowman's capsule, outside in between nephrons, whatever space is present, we call this as interstitial space or interstitium. That is also filled up with fluid. So here, this interstitium, that is interstitial fluid, and this Bowman's capsule, whatever fluid is present, these two, they uh, try to put upward pressure from here. So this upward pressure also causes resistance. This upward pressure exerted by interstitial fluid here and this fluid here put together, this comes around 18 to 20 mm of Hg. So already we are done with 30, and this is another around 18 to 20, so 50. Total Hg of pressure of the blood was 60 minus 30 offered by blood minus around 20. So 30 plus 20 is 50. 60 minus 50, final pressure over here is only 10 mm of Hg. But this is double the pressure of blood when compared to the pressure available anywhere in our body. So the pressure under which this filtration of the blood takes place is called ultrafiltration. I hope you understood what it is. Once again, I repeat. First thing is that afferent arteriole is having larger diameter than efferent arteriole. Because of this, there is high pressure developed over here. This is first point you need to understand. Second, blood that is flowing over here from here, this blood is having hydrostatic pressure, its own pressure of 60 mm of Hg. But this pressure is not carried till here to get filtered. That pressure is not retained over here to that level. Why? Because it faces two types of resistance. One, from the blood itself. From what part of blood? Proteins, albumin molecules. Because of their osmotic potential nature, they don't allow the blood to move fast. So their pressure, that means opposing force in the blood itself here, is 30 mm of Hg. So from 60, it has come down to 30. Again, this blood pressure after 30 mm of Hg pressure, still it faces another type of resistance over here. This particular Bowman's capsule, which is filled up with fluid, this also offers upward resistance force. So this, and even here interstitial fluid which is present, these two put together opposes over here the pressure of this blood, that is around 18 to 20. So final pressure of the blood over here is 10 mm of Hg. So blood is getting filtered over here at a pressure of 10 mm of Hg. That is called as ultrafiltration, right? So resistance, we understood what resistance we talked about. Now, what is this GFR? GFR, R over here stands for rate, glomerular filtration rate. When you're saying rate, we are talking about the amount of the filtrate that is produced per minute, the volume of the filtrate that is produced per minute. Dear students, there is connection between heart and kidney. And of course, there is connection among all the parts of the body. But what connection that I am talking here about? Uh, if you study about heart, you will know that heart pumping organ, which is pumping organ, it pumps around 5 liters of blood per minute on an average. 5 liters of blood on an average it pumps per minute. Whereas on the whole, both the kidneys filter around 1/4 of this blood. So if you are having 5 liters of blood over there, then around 1000 to 1200 or 1100 ml of blood is getting filtered here in both the kidneys put together. That is 1/4 of the blood. So heart is pumping 5 liters of blood, whereas kidneys are filtering 1/4 of that blood. So how much is the filtrate that is produced per minute over here? I'm talking about both the kidneys. That means by all the nephrons put together, it is 125 ml. It is 125 ml. That means per minute, the volume of the filtrate that is produced per minute by both the kidneys, by all the nephrons in both the kidneys is 125 ml. So this is per minute I'm talking about. That is what is glomerular filtration rate. The volume of the filtrate that is produced in the glomerulus, that is collected in the Bowman's capsule as filtrate per minute is glomerular filtration rate, which is 125 ml. Now, if it is 125 ml, dear students, please concentrate what I'm saying, because if you understand this, then only you will understand the need for the second and the third steps over here. If it is 125 ml, which is getting filtered per minute, now you calculate per day. 125 ml per minute, 125 into 60, that is per hour, and in one day you have 24 hours. So please calculate 125 into 60 into 24. How much? 125 ml, this is per minute, into 60, that is per hour, into 24 hours. How many milliliters you are getting? 180,000 milliliters of nephric filtrate is produced per day. How much? 180,000 milliliters. Now you convert this into liters. It is 180 liters. 180 liters of nephric filtrate is produced by both the kidneys. Now that much of blood is not available, but that much of filtrate is produced. Hope you understood what I'm trying to explain you, that per minute 125 ml. See, I'm using the word nephric filtrate because here you cannot call this filtrate as urine. We call this as only primary urine. It is not called as urine. Urine is highly concentrated hypertonic material which has to go out. But here that is not the case. That is the reason we call it as nephric filtrate or glomerular filtrate. It is called glomerular filtrate or nephric filtrate. So what did we understand over here, friends? That how much is the total volume of the fluid or the nephric filtrate produced per day? 180 liters. Now, if we were to produce this much and try to put it out, output was this much, then we will not do any other work in our life, isn't it? So that is not the thing that is happening. And this leads us to understand the next concept, that is selective reabsorption. Now let's try to understand the connection between first and the second steps. So when filtration takes place here, what is happening? Out of this 180 liters that I spoke about, all the material from our body will not be sent out. That much of water or the filtrate will not be sent out of the body. We will not survive if that were the case happening. So many things from whatever has gone inside this filtrate are taken back. It's all taken back by our nephron. That is what is selective reabsorption, the second step. Now, what does this nephric filtrate first of all consist of? Let us try to understand the constituents of this nephric filtrate over here. Whatever is there, which is formed over here and moving. You know that this is proximal convoluted tubule, the second part. The first part of the renal tubule. We know Bowman's capsule, it leads into proximal convoluted tubule. So in proximal convoluted tubule, which is receiving this nephric filtrate, what is the constitution or the constituents of this nephric filtrate? It is isotonic to blood. First point. This nephric filtrate is isotonic to blood. That means blood's concentration and its concentration is the same. Hope you understood why I explained earlier slides this point. So here, 125 ml is produced on an average daily. This much of nephric filtrate is produced on an average. You calculate it and you get 180 liters. Average is this much, but this much is not sent out of the body. So what we understand is that, let's try to look at first the constituents of this particular nephric filtrate. Nephric filtrate has all the things, whatever you find those things present in blood. Whatever things are present in blood plasma, same thing you will find over here. Only difference between blood and this primary urine is absence of some big sized proteins like albumins and cells. That means RBCs, WBCs, big protein molecules, these are not there. Otherwise, whatever is present in plasma, all those things come out in proximal convoluted tubule. That means along with the unwanted material that should be sent out from our body, nitrogenous waste material that should be sent out from our body, that is urea, uric acid, creatinine, hippuric acid, along with this waste material, even useful materials have entered over here. That is the reason the amount is coming up to 180 liters. Along with waste, even useful material are entering for getting excreted. If this is the case, which happens, then we won't survive. So what happens is that second step gets involved. Our renal tubule does the wonderful job of taking the things back, whatever is needed by our body. That step is called selective reabsorption. Means once the urine is produced and it is moving through this proximal convoluted tubule, entire renal tubule for that matter, renal tubule takes back from this primary urine which is flowing whatever things it wants. That is what is this selective, means it is selecting the things. Okay, my body needs this ion, my body needs this particular chemical, this particular nutrient, so let me take back. That is how the cells decide and take back the things. They are selective in nature. Renal tubule selects the things and takes it back. Absorption, taking back. Why we say it is reabsorption? Because first time already absorption was done by the body at the time of digestion of food. Second time again it is taking back. That is why this step is called reabsorption. So the things that are present over here in this nephric filtrate, you find lot of water. More, how much water is needed to for the urea to go out? Along with that, extra water is also going off. So lot of water is there. The constituent, major constituent of urine, glucose, amino acids, vitamins, all important ions like calcium, sodium, potassium, all these things are there present over here. Lactate, etc. All these things, important molecules which our body needs, they are all going out. If they all go out, then we cannot survive, we will not have energy. That is the reason these are all taken back. Selective, our tubule decides what are the things it should take back. It is selective in nature. And because already, see, I'm saying that glucose is reabsorbed. I'm saying that glucose is reabsorbed. So what is happening over here is that second time it is again taking back. First time absorption was done. Now selective reabsorption, friends, whatever substances are reabsorbed here, we find that we divide those substances into three categories: high threshold substances, low threshold substances, and non-threshold substances. High threshold substances means these are the substances at any cost we have to take it back. That means renal tubule will take back all these substances at any cost. Glucose, amino acids, calcium, sodium, all these important things are taken back. Low threshold substances means renal tubule absorbs these substances but in very less quantities, minute quantities. An example under this is urea. Non-threshold substances, under any circumstances, these should not be taken by the renal tubule. They will not absorb it back. So what comes under this? All nitrogenous waste products are a part over here. Creatine, creatinine, hippuric acid, urea, all those things. Urea is little bit absorbed over here, but otherwise it is a main nitrogenous product, right? Friends, what we have learned so far, let us try to quickly recapitulate. Mechanism of urine formation. This is also called as, or physiology of urine formation is also called as uropoiesis. This takes place under 3 steps. The first step is called ultrafiltration or glomerular filtration. So second step over here, second step is selective reabsorption. The third step, tubular secretion. We'll deal with this 2 steps in detail in the next class. But here, as of now, try to understand that blood is getting filtered over here in the capillaries of glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule. This is the filtration, first filtration. But when blood is getting filtered, along with the waste material, even useful substances are getting filtered out. So those useful substances which are getting filtered out are taken back again by renal tubule. That is what is this step which is called as selective reabsorption. So substances which are passing through the renal tubule, we divide them according to how much importance they are to be taken back or not into 3 categories. High threshold substances, 100% they are taken back, like glucose, amino acids, vitamins, lactate, all these things, calcium ion, sodium, potassium, all these things, 100% they are absorbed back. Water, most important. Low threshold substances in very less quantity. I'm saying that urea is nitrogenous waste, but it is still absorbed in less quantity back. Why? We'll see this afterwards. And non-threshold substances, we don't want them in our body, so 100% they are thrown out. So this is called as selective reabsorption. And mode of reabsorption, where this absorption is taking place in this particular renal tubule, we'll study this in the next class. Let's try to understand what we have learned. So we understood diffusion, osmosis, concentrations of different solution, modes of transport, urinary system, what it consists of, and the steps. Hope you understood, friends. We'll understand in detail about selective reabsorption and mode of reabsorption afterwards in the next class. Hello, Vijayalakshmi ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Students, please stay tuned. Okay, we have economics class now. Okay, we'll take 2 minutes break.